right. Good afternoon. It's great to be here. I got to get a few things out of the way before I get started. Sitting here listening to all this talk. I haven't seen Haldane. Used to be on the radio with him every week. And Brian, I've seen you drive before. And if you got a text message saying that you owed money for driving infractions, I'd take that seriously. Paul, the rest of our conversation was that I very vividly remember the superintendent of the Merchant Marine Academy telling us that he had folks graduating from the Merchant Marine Academy that were going into jobs first year out making $30,000 a month. And so if I remember what I told you, it was that I needed help with retirement and I wanted you to. Now, seriously, great to be here. Paul, thank you for the kind introduction. We had a chance to go hang out a little bit last week, and Paul just crushed a triathlon over the weekend, so the guy's a stud. Joined by my wife, Carissa. Thank you very much for being here. And Paul Sawyer, who was our forever chief of staff, 3,650 days from start to finish, and did an amazing job and a selfless public servant, so thank you all for being here. So you know how all good plans never, ever work out. So this morning I was working on things at home, and I was delaying my shower just because I was trying to get a little bit of extra work in before I left. And all of a sudden dogs start barking, going crazy. I'm like grabbing my clothes to go change into after the shower. I go look to see what the dogs are barking at. It would be the water company in the front yard turning that thing and cutting the water off. It's like, man, ouch. So I urge y'all to keep your distance. Now, I called a number of people, relatives and friends, and like, hey, see if I can get into somebody's house, and nobody answered. Not a single person answered. Craig, I should have called you. I bet you get a nice marble shower, several jets in and everything. But so, Catherine, I'm glad that you're an attorney because I may need some help, and maybe if you can fix a broken window. Garret Graves, I was born and raised in South Louisiana, and our whole family was born and raised in South Louisiana. My dad was born here, grew up in Opelousas, and then came back to Baton Rouge. My mom was born in New Orleans, lived much of her life in New Iberia, and came back to Baton Rouge. And I'm really proud to call this place home. I'll never forget the only vacation we would ever take when I was a kid was we'd go to Florida every summer. And we just go to the Panhandle, Pensacola, Navarro, wherever, with 5 other families from Baton Rouge, just total managed chaos. And but that was really the only vacation that we ever took. And then as I got older, I had the chance to travel to other places, and I realized how unique and how special Louisiana is. How unique and special Louisiana, the way that we have taken all of these traits, characteristics, all of these special things from all over the world, and just picked the best ones and really capitalized on them here. And you all know, I mean, the music, I was just at Jazz Fest weekend before last, absolutely amazing. I mean, how we can put on a Mardi Gras parade, a St. Patrick's Day parade, it's absolutely incredible. The culture here, the food, I mean, this place really is special and it's amazing. And you go back and look at our history, being one of the top port cities in the world, down in South Louisiana, we were able to be exposed to all of these different things from all over the world because other places didn't get that. They didn't get these boats coming in with the people, the cultures, the music, the art. And we did, and we got it, and we were able to just say, you know what, I like this, and I like this, and I like this, and we've made this great place that we all call home. But I served in Congress for 10 years, and look, I look back at that, an absolutely amazing experience. And before that, I had the chance to work on coastal issues for the state of Louisiana, tapped by former Governor Jindal to help rebuild levees and coastal wetlands after Hurricane Katrina. And once again, just remarkable experience. And looking back over, that was nearly 2 decades of work, having the chance to, again, be intimately involved in one of the largest civil works programs in U.S. history, tens of billions of dollars, and trying to protect people that were our friends, our family, people that we knew, trying to restore the coast, protecting our livelihood and our economy. It wasn't a job, it was a calling, and some of the people that worked in that agency, in that coastal agency, similarly saw it as a calling. They saw it as mission work. People came from all over the state, from all over the nation to be involved. I'll say it again, tens of billions of dollars, largest civil works program in U.S. history. integrating restoration and environmental productivity with structural protection and flooding from flooding and hurricanes in our communities across South Louisiana. Lots of challenges, wildly successful at the end of the day. Had the chance to be thrown into Deepwater Horizon, another curveball thrown at us in South Louisiana, and being able to do the response activities, negotiating. And I will tell you, we negotiated hard with the responsible parties in that oil spill. We rejected their offers time after time because they weren't legitimate. They didn't fully represent the damage, the injury they had done to our state. And at the end of the day, as a result of us playing hardball, holding out and relying on science, it resulted in the largest settlement in U.S. history from a single company. The state of Louisiana, if we play our cards right, big if today, we should receive around $10 billion for additional work in our coastal communities, by far the largest of any state. Going into Congress, I had a little bit of an idea of what I was getting myself into, and that I had worked as a staffer in the congressional delegation. But I'll also tell you that all during the time that I worked there as a staffer, I was convinced that there was like this Wizard of Oz thing, and you pulled the curtain back, and there was this room where there was this brain trust that were making these decisions that resulted in all of this, wisdom and all of these incredible decisions and bills and policies coming out of Washington. And the outcome was a lot more like the Wizard of Oz than I expected, and that you pulled that curtain back, and I was like, I guess that TV is live, so I won't say exactly what I said, but I said, oh darn, and realized that it wasn't quite the brain trust that I thought it once was. But you know what? And I can say a lot of negative things about Congress holistically, and you're all aware. The approval rating of the Congress is somewhere around 8%. 8%. It's dismal approval ratings. But I also want to remind you that the Congress is the board of directors for America, the greatest country in the world, though imperfect, the greatest country in the world. And having traveled, having had the chance to travel now to a lot of other countries and experiencing those places, and once again, seeing the pros and cons of those other places, I remained convinced that this place is the greatest. But one of the things that drives me absolutely crazy now that I left Congress in January and had a chance to settle down, reflect, and I'm gonna do a little sidebar here for just a minute. I can't tell you how much I appreciate those of you that I've run into over the past couple of months that have said, oh my gosh, you look so well rested and healthy and happy. And so all I could think is what crap I looked like before. So thanks a lot for that. But seriously, I think back to just politicians or public figures or elected officials, and I think about it a lot, again, for the few months that I've been out of public office and having time to reflect. And I think about, as we've seen those cards that are mailed to you and handed out, the push cards and the little advocacy cards, vote for Jane, vote for John, they're gonna do these things. I bet you if we went back 20 years, we would see the same damn things on those cards. Really, really. I'm gonna fight and address crime. I'm gonna improve our schools. I'm gonna fix infrastructure. I'm gonna get a new bridge crossing the river. I'm gonna balance the budget. I'm gonna cut taxes. Right? This stuff is resonating. These are things that they've been on those candidate cards now, not for months, not for years, but for decades and decades and decades. So I want to do a little paradigm shift with you. Let me ask you a question. You're in Rotary, and I'm sure many of you here, you're here for the community, you're here for business, you're here for networking. Put yourself in a position where you are hiring an employee, and you had a budget to hire an employee to do a job for your business, for your company, for your nonprofit, and you had a budget. And so you hire somebody, you got your money, and you're looking at it and say, you know what, this position's worth X, or this person's worth X, and they're gonna deliver that benefit, they're gonna provide a return on investment for what I'm paying them. They're helping to market, they're helping to advertise, they're delivering results for our clients, they're manufacturing, they're producing products, they're engineers, they're designing things. But let me say it again. You look at how much you're paying them, you made a calculation on that return of investment on those folks. So let me bring you back to politics. Look, I got paid. I get paid in Congress, we get paid $174,000 a year. We did. Legislators get paid, city council members, mayors, governors, everyone, they get paid. I ask you to think about that ROI, that return on investment for folks that you elect to political office. And whether it's a representative, whether it's a council member, whether it's a member of Congress, whether it's a mayor, a parish president, a governor, or a president, I ask you to think about that ROI, just like your employee. You're going to give them, you're going to assign them tasks, you're going to give them things to do. You're going to say, hey, here are your expectations. And then after 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever it is, did they provide a return? Did they actually deliver results? Did they make change? Pull out that card. Were they able to achieve those things? And look, I want to be clear. If this stuff was easy, especially in a body like Congress or the state legislature where you have hundreds of people, if it were easy, these things would have been done forever ago. I remember a funny television ad one of my former bosses, Congressman Billy Tozan, did, that he was down in around Morgan City, and he was sitting on an overpass on Highway 90. Highway 90, y'all remember, goes from Lafayette to New Orleans. It's a 4-lane road. They put future I-49 signs on it in 1997. Tozan was sitting up on an overpass looking at the road, and he said, if every politician delivered on their promise to improve this road, we'd have 32 lanes across today. And he's right. But what I've seen in politics in the time that I was there, and I want to be clear, I was intimately there. What I've seen is that people aren't focused oftentimes, and I don't mean to paint with a broad brush because there are some amazing people that are in politics. But they don't think about that ROI. They don't think about their customers. What they're doing is and I'll quote John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania that I don't quote often, but he said, Congress has become OnlyFans for politicians. If you laugh, you know what OnlyFans is. But the point is that it's become theatrical. It's become performative. And it's more important to get my viral video than it is actually doing things that improve your community. You know, I said a little while ago, crime. I was reading a report just yesterday that said that in Baton Rouge itself, that the average household pays just under will pay just under $2,000 this year as a result of crime, meaning paying for the cost of crime on our community, $2,000 per household. How many years have you seen those ratings where it said Louisiana's school systems were the worst, or the 49th best, or the 48th best, or one of the studies I was reading this morning, 47th best, we're improving. This is unacceptable. It is, it's unacceptable. And I just think that as I have a chance to reflect and look back on things, we've got to demand more and better of the people that are representing us. You know, look, I said earlier that this place really is special, and I believe that so deeply. And the more I travel, the more I have a chance to experience other cultures, other states, other countries, the more I am so assured in that. This place is special. We don't deserve to be at the bottom of the list, as Newsweek just found us this year, 50th best state in America. Thanks. Maybe we should have a 51st state. We can do better. And when you look at the fundamentals of Louisiana, it drives me absolutely crazy because on paper, we should be blowing everyone away. And so my message to you today is take a minute and think about the fact that you had millions and millions of people that have decided that they're going to serve in the military, that they're going to serve this country, they're going to stand up and fight for our freedoms, they're going to protect America. We've had hundreds of thousands of people that have given the ultimate sacrifice for those very rights, for those very freedoms that we all sit here and enjoy. And then ask yourself a question as if the behavior of politics today respects that sacrifice. Does the behavior of politics today, the behavior of politicians today, the performance, the outcomes, does it respect the sacrifice of those that served? Does it respect the sacrifice of those that gave their lives? I don't think it does. And I want to be very clear of what I'm saying here today. I'm not saying that you need a cave, you need to compromise on your ideals or your beliefs. I'm not saying that at all. Look, the reality is you have Republicans in majority, you have Democrats in majority, presidents, mayors, governors, and others. And in many, many cases in the 10 years that I served, I found that the teams on the field, I wasn't really happy with who was there. But the reality was, that's what the field looked like. So you got to figure out how in the world you're going to operate under those conditions. And that's what takes skill, not performative, not theatrical politics. That's what takes skill, figuring out how you're actually going to get things done. And so I want to stand here and I'm going to do a little bit of an end zone dance on some of the things that we were able to do when we served for those 10 years. In the 10 years that we served, Paul talked about the Comey Project. I mean, this project's been around since the early 80s. Many of you paid a tax for this project, and nothing ever happened. It's a project to provide flood protection here. And now that project has nearly $1 billion in the bank, and it's underway. In fact, Paul's one of the folks that's working to make sure that it's going to get finished. Going to provide flood protection. We had a project from '92 here for 5 of the bayous here to clean them out and widen them and provide better flood protection. And that project had been stalled since '92, $250,000 in the bank, and it is nearly completed right now. And the reason I bring up projects like that is because investments in infrastructure like that translate to lower insurance rates. If we have better flood protection, we have lower flood insurance rates, and we don't disrupt our communities. I won't go through everything, but billions and billions of dollars invested in projects that literally have been stuck for decades and decades. I-10, I mean, my gosh, how in the world we can be in this situation. I said this last time I was here, but I want to say it again. You know, you think about cities like New York, like LA, like Miami. I mean, these major metropolitan areas. New York, LA, Miami. And then number 4, worst traffic bottleneck in America. Ladies and gentlemen, our hometown. Like, how embarrassing. The density of people isn't comparable. The investment in infrastructure isn't comparable. But we have the 4th worst bottleneck in the nation. The folks have been working on building a new bridge for 50 years now. I mean, it's crazy what's going on. But let me go back and say, we're allowing this to happen by putting people in place and not holding them accountable. We were able to secure billions of dollars, and it's why there's a new lane on I-10 between Highland Road and going into Ascension Parish. It's why the new Piku lane's exit's gonna be opening up. It's why there's a new terrace exit, and they promised us when we got the money for the terrace exit, they were gonna fix the I-10 funneling, but they didn't do it. They're going to, but they're taking a lot longer than they promised. We had legislation that allowed you to, on your phone, give permission to members of Congress to actually act on your behalf with federal agencies. Here's a scenario. Somebody's overseas, their passport gets stolen. They need help getting out of the country to come back home. We would have to tell them to sign a form and mail it to us. You can imagine how that would go over when someone's stuck in a foreign country. So we passed legislation to fix that. And as Paul noted, and I got to tell you, it's going to go down as one of the things that I know our entire team is going to be so incredibly proud of. This Social Security issue. Louisiana is the 6th most impacted state in the country. Over about a 40-year period across the nation, folks like police officers, sheriff's deputies, teachers, and other state and local government officials had somewhere between $600 and $700 billion taken from them in reduced Social Security benefits they paid into the Social Security system for but weren't given. It was estimated that over the next 10 years alone, this legislation was going to cost around $200 billion. Very, very expensive with already a Social Security system that's incredibly challenged financially. We sat down with Congresswoman Spanberger, who is now running for governor of Virginia. We had a bipartisan bill. We sat down for several weeks and worked on a bipartisan strategy. This bill, for 41 years, people tried to get this fixed and tried to get something passed, including many members of Louisiana's delegation. We sat down, we developed a strategy. I wrote the bill, we moved forward. We ended up going very, very slowly. We became the most co-sponsored bill in all of Congress. We had 325 Republican and Democrat co-sponsors, the most co-sponsored bill in all the Congress, broad bipartisan support. We couldn't get it through the committee, so we used a rarely used mechanism for the fourth time in 30 years to circumvent the committee and force it to a vote before the House floor. I will tell you, we offended some people by that move, including some close friends, but it was the right thing to do because all we were getting was lip service. We then got over to the Senate where Senator Schumer and others told the folks that they were going to negotiate it as part of the end of the year financial package, appropriations package, which translates to we're going to kill it. That's what that means. And so recognizing that I was in my final months and I had nothing to lose. I was speaking at a huge rally with all these public officials, and I was right before Senator Schumer. And it's just before he was being introduced, I thanked him for agreeing to bring the bill straight to the Senate floor for a vote. In front of thousands of firefighters and teachers. And that's just what happened. Second to last vote before the Senate shut down last year. And I can't even tell you how pleased I am. I run into people, I'll bet you, every single day who bring this up. And just so you all know, there have been over 73,000 people in Louisiana that have received nearly $600 million in back pay benefits. And I want to be clear, the back pay didn't go back to 40 years. Back pay just went back to January of last year. But over nearly $600 million. I had a lady tell me she got a check for $31,000 because what they did is they back paid you to January of last year, then they're going to fix it moving forward where you get your monthly payment. But this was money that was stolen. And so every once in a while, the right thing happens. And it's amazing when something like that happens because there weren't all these lobbyists and all these folks that were involved. It was just the right thing to do. It was a grassroots effort, and it was amazing. Now, look, I want to say that, and I want to leave a few minutes for questions. I want to say that, look, we didn't bat 1,000 in our office. We didn't. We did a good job. We were an effective office, and I want to commend your attention to an organization called the Center for Effective Lawmaking. It's an organization that is comprised of Vanderbilt University and the University of Virginia. And what they do is they go through and they rank the effectiveness of members of Congress. They're starting to do it with legislators, but they only have a couple of legislators so far. A couple of states that they've done the rankings on. But what they do is they rank actual effectiveness, bills passed, getting things done. Their metrics aren't perfect, but they're the best that are out there right now. We're going to try and work with them and see if we can improve it. But I just strongly encourage you, before you go vote to elect someone, take a look at that. See if these people are actually delivering results. Because, look, while I understand that people have very strongly held ideological beliefs, and I want to say it again to you, I think that's fantastic and I respect you for that. But the reality is that there is under virtually no scenarios where Republicans only can dictate what's going to happen or Democrats only can dictate what's going to happen, because the rules of the Congress, the rules of this federal system require, especially in the Senate, bipartisan participation in virtually, I'll put a little asterisk there, in virtually everything. And so you've got to figure out how to work together with folks. And one huge underappreciated negotiation was one that I was put in charge of in May of 23, where we negotiated with the Biden White House and did the largest savings in American history. We cut $2.7 trillion in spending because there truly is.